All right, today we're going to journey back, way back, thousands of years, to uncover this incredible story of how ancient Bengal was really forged in a clash between two powerful and really different civilizations.
Okay, so let's just dive right in. The story we usually hear about ancient India, it almost always starts with the Aryans. It's a huge narrative, right? And because of that, the history that came before often gets, well, it gets a little lost. But what if I told you that in the fertile lands of Bengal, a really sophisticated and powerful civilization was already thriving, long before they ever showed up? That's the story we're getting into today.
So first, let's really establish the deep, independent roots of the people and the culture that defined this whole region for thousands of years.
I mean, we are talking about ancient history here. We've got archaeological finds, things like human remains, that place settlements in Bengal all the way back to 2500 BCE. Now, just to give you a sense of how far back that is, that's the exact same time the great cities of the Indus Valley civilization, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, were at their absolute peak.
This land was a true melting pot. Long before any major migrations from the northwest, it was home to this diverse mix of indigenous groups. Peoples like the Vedi, the Austric, and the Dravidians. They formed the very bedrock of the Bengali population. They built this incredibly rich cultural foundation from the ground up. And this number? Wow, this is all about power. By the 4th century BCE, the region was home to a kingdom called Gangaradai. And Greek historians, the ones writing when Alexander the Great was on his march, they documented this kingdom's incredible military might. An army of 200,000 infantry, plus thousands of cavalry and war elephants. I mean, their reputation was so fierce, it was one of the main reasons Alexander's famously unstoppable army decided, you know what, we're going to stop here and turn back. So you've got this powerful, established civilization. What happens when someone new shows up? Well, starting around 1500 BCE, a new people, the Aryans, they begin migrating into the subcontinent from the northwest, and they bring with them a new language, Sanskrit, new gods, and a totally different social structure. This really sets the stage for a profound, centuries-long collision of worlds.
And this slide, this just lays out the heart of the conflict perfectly. On one side, you have the reality of Bengal, an advanced, prosperous civilization. But on the other, you have the view of the newcomers, which they recorded in their own sacred texts. And in those texts, they describe the people of Bengal not as equals, but as something less than human, bird-like creatures, and their home as an impure land.
So it's so important to get this. This was an ideological war just as much as a physical one. This quote from an interpretation of a Vedic text is just shockingly direct. There's no mincing words here. It explicitly frames the people of Bengal, the Vangas, not just as inferior, but as a people who were, or should be, destroyed. It's a clear and powerful tool of dehumanization.
And this wasn't just, some kind of negative opinion. They literally wrote this cultural aggression into their religious law. Texts like the Baudhayana Dharma Sutra officially labeled Bengal as an apavitra bhumi, an impure land. Any Aryan who traveled there, unless it was for a pilgrimage, had to perform a purification ritual, a penance, when they got back. This created a massive religious and cultural wall between the two worlds.
So how do you justify expanding into someone else's land? Well, the Aryans came up with some really powerful myths. And this story from the Shatapatha Brahmana is a perfect example. It's brilliant, in a way. It reframes conquest not as a violent invasion, but as a divine act of purification. The holy fire of the Aryans literally burns away the impurity of the native lands, making them clean and holy enough for settlement. It's basically a mythological green light for colonization.
Now, this clash, it didn't just end overnight, not even close. The resilience of the indigenous Bengali culture was so strong that what followed was this slow, thousand-year transformation that, in the end, created a totally new, kind of hybrid social order. I mean, think about that. 1,000 years. The fact that this whole process took over a millennium, that tells you everything you need to know about the strength of the local resistance. It wasn't until the Mauryan Empire, around the 4th century BCE, that Aryan political influence made its first real dent. But it took powerful dynasties later on, like the Guptas and finally the Senas, to systematically place that Brahmanical culture and its rigid caste structure on top of Bengal. This whole transformation really comes to a head in the 12th century under a king named Balal Sena. He established this system called Kulanism, a super rigid social hierarchy that ranked Brahmin families based on a list of 9 specific virtues, things like proper conduct, humility, and knowledge. This system basically cemented the absolute authority of a new Brahmin elite and created a deeply, deeply stratified new society. So, what's the big takeaway here? What was the final outcome? Well, it wasn't a story of total replacement. It was a synthesis. The ancient, resilient indigenous culture of Bengal absolutely survived. But a new Brahmanical framework, a new language, a new religion, a new social order was built right on top of it. And this fusion is what created the complex, layered society that would define Bengal for centuries and centuries to come.
And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? This history, it's not just ancient, it's foundational. So how do the echoes of this 1,000-year clash of civilizations, this incredible story of resistance, suppression, and eventual fusion, how does all of that continue to shape culture, society, and the very idea of what it means to be Bengali today?